It's about goddamn time we had a vampire track on this channel.
I know. So I said the first time I heard it. I was like, "Oh my god, this is fucking Dracula." You tell me this is Dracula? The count.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of That's Audiophiles. My name's John. His name's Andy. I must have died and gone to heaven because it was 11:15 on a Saturday in 1999. Right across from where I was standing on the dance floor, she was landing. It was clear that she was from another time. More on that later, but first we have a track to listen to, selected by my compadre Andy. Andy, what do you have for the commune today?
I have a band called The Faint. Are you familiar with them? Have you ever heard of them before?
Haven't got the faintest.
See what you did there. Can't get anything past me. The track by them that I'd like you to check out, now knowing that you haven't the faintest about them, is a track called "I Disappear." So I am going to ask that you vanish, go off, give this a listen, and come back or reappear, and let me know what you think.
There's an old line from Blackadder 2. They talk about someone who's disappeared. And Lord Percy goes, vanished like an old oak table. Don't you mean varnished? Anyway,
Oh, that would make more sense.
I shall go off and listen to this.
Okay, great.
Stop it before it launches. So we're in indie disco territory. Really wonderful, filthy bass starting, and you have these sort of ambienty, synthy sounds that coalesce into a kind of melody, and hand claps. Hallelujah. Okay, good start.
I disappear, I lost control, my body's moving on its own. I watch myself walk away, a foreign spirit took my place. Empty stare, its eyes are gold, stole my essence, it's writing my pulse, a burst of light. I disappear, I lost control. I disappear. I disappear. I disappear.
This is so strange because if you take away that wonderful filthy bass, which is probably the best sounding element of it, then it's almost like a new wavy, new romantic-y type of song. And the synths, which I don't usually like that much, are actually the most interesting bit. All these little elements in there. There's one that was doing, it was almost like a creaky door. I really like that. And it's just little elements scattered through that I find myself surprisingly liking there more. The voice is neither here nor there, he's singing down the end of a bucket or something. But that's a stylized thing. That's not an issue for me at all. But yeah, it was about to change to something else. So I'll just put it back. I'll put it back a little bit more actually, because there were some bits in there I really liked.
I disappeared.
That note there.
I disappeared. I disappeared. I lost control. My body's moving on its own. I watch myself walk away before it's
Yeah, that's confirmed it for me actually. Although I really like the sound of that. When it goes to a normal bass, just here, the overall sound is actually fitting and more pleasing, which I never thought I'd hear myself saying something like this. But yeah, bizarre. I really like that sound, but I think for the overall song, it works just much better hit with that normal bass. See me? Yeah, I'm surprised myself.
took my place. I disappeared. I disappeared. I disappeared. How could I resist? It's all I wanted. Now I guess I've got it. Why it happened, I don't know. Hope this doesn't last forever.
Sorry for stopping again. I really like that bit where it just changes. The synth was changed tone. Spot
It happened, I don't know. Hope this doesn't last forever.
interesting notes there. Hmm. Interesting. Lots of really interesting elements to this. I don't know how it works as a whole. I think they were trying to keep it interesting, but sometimes you're just throwing stuff out there to try and just change for the sake of it. And I don't know, maybe it's the TikTok attention span, but is who they're playing for, and so they have to do it. But yeah, there's bits in that I really liked and worked, and other bits I liked that didn't work. Yeah, interesting. Right, let's find out more. Let's go back to Andy.
Okay, you're back. And
Mhm.
what'd you make of this tune?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. So my thoughts changed throughout this song, and I will try to give you a running commentary. But it's hellish enough for me to make sense of them, let alone to put them down and try to make sense of someone else. But here we go. So we start with this filthy sounding bass line.
Hmm.
It is what I imagine a bilge pump would sound like if it was made into a musical instrument. And I shall refer to it as that from now on. So there are some interesting sounds in there as well. Firstly, hand claps. Now, I don't mind if they're a feature. Usually indicate a point in the song of excitement and enthusiasm or there as a, as a phrase or emphasis. If they're omnipresent, it feels a little lazy and a bit rough on the drummer as well. So I did phase them out of my hearing about halfway through this song. So at the start as well, there was some, I'm going to call them chime stroke clangs and some ambient synth noises which coalesced into a melody. I found that very interesting. And within moments, obviously, the beat kicks in, and I realize we're into indie dance territory. And it sounds to me sort of the noughties version of this type of music from the sort of clubby, disco-y vibe. And I had a thought, it's interesting that when I think of indie dance music, I hark back to when I was like 19, 20, and that sort of baggy sound, etc., which I didn't know then, but took its cue from like krautrock and other stuff like that, which I wasn't aware of back then. Um, and each generation has their own ituration of their sound, whether it be that sort of angular sound or, synthy sound or indie dance sound. And this one is more sort of the clubby, disco-y type. So it's just different influences, and they create their own way of working out what they want to do, which is a kind of indie sound which you dance to.
Mhm.
So I just found that interesting that I have those thoughts then. So your man starts singing, and it is this again, and we mentioned this loads of times before, this standard sort of I would call down produced vocals that don't particularly do anything for me, but it fits this track, and I've got no
Yeah.
problem with it at all. It's not a highlight of the track for me.
I would absolutely agree with you. If I had to pick one thing that wasn't like that really stood out to me, it would be the way the vocals were laid on this track.
Yeah, they're kind of downplayed,
Yeah.
and it's almost like commentary, rather than as a key component or highlight of it.
Yeah, you're not
But it's
dancing
fine.
to the vocals,
No,
you're dancing to the music, right?
exactly, but it's functional. It does this trick. So that's again fine. It's not a minus point. It's not a plus point. It's a point. Um, as the track progresses, though, there are a few thoughts that dawn on me, and I'll try to expand. One, they seem to have a large bag of tricks which the band stroke producer dips into frequently. Now, I know that I'm not the target audience for this, so I have a different take than would be intended. I think rather than trying to keep my 30-second attention span interested, I sort of get from it almost a lack of confidence. Like they didn't feel the song was strong enough. So they keep putting glitter on top of spray paint, on top of tinsel. I thought the song was decent, and they didn't have to have 24 different change ups to it. But that's me, I know that. So we have this, it goes into like a versey bit, and we have this really nice verse with this funky bass line, which I really like. And then there's like a brief, I'll call it 1 second pit stop. They change wheels for Mr. Bilge Pump to come in. And as you know, I have a particular fondness for that kind of sound, that dirty, distorted. And there's a nice sort of brief percussion that leads into this sort of great sort of new wavy guitar as well. Ding, ding, ding. Again, really, really like. And then there's some synths going along there that are kind of goose stepping alongside that kind of remind me of a digital alarm clock. I really like them as well. And they do a couple of times they do that. It's just a fraction, but they do this lovely little note bend a couple of times, which delighted me for some reason, which I can't explain, but I just loved it. So Mr. Bilge Pumps comes back in, and then with it, there's this kind of synth sound that sounds like a toy emergency vehicle siren where the batteries are just running down a bit. So it's not as alarmed as well. It's almost like a lazier, siren. I really like that as well. So thought number two at this point, contrary to my usual tastes, I'm actually enjoying the synth parts more than anything else, which I
Mm.
would never have said so at the start. Um, all these different sounds add layers to the song, and they sort of shift things as well. And just having moaned about the tricks and changes and too many of them, I'm actually appreciating each one more and more by the second as they shift and augment the track.
Look at you coming
Fault,
around.
well, fault number three, and this is really a shock to me. If you did an autopsy on this song and laid out all the components on the mortuary slab, then that muddy sound from that basic guitar thing would be the one I go, Bagsy mine. However, as much as I adore Mr. Bilge Pump, I'm actually finding it a distraction, and it's almost like it's shoehorned into the rest of the song. And I'm really liking the normal funky bass more.
Mm.
Again, real shock to me, but there you go.
Yeah.
It's a great feat. And if I was to pick one element of this song, I'd say that's my favorite. But as a song as a whole, I can't believe I'm saying this. They could have actually dropped it out, and I think it would the song would hang together better. But that's again, I'm God knows what's going on. I might have had a stroke while I was listening to this. Thought number four: strip out the more ostentatious parts of this and the effects and Mr. Bushbum. And what we're left with, I believe, is like a new wavy, almost new romantic song from the mid 80s. And believe it or not, and we've talked about this recently, bizarre songs and bands that flash before your eyes. And I had like Duran Duran flash across my mind for a moment, and I battered that fucker away quick. But yeah, it's just really, really weird. So again, so the song progresses. There's more dropouts, and that tired siren comes back in. Big tick, loved it. And then we go into another part where there's another synth that phases across the screen. That's the way I can describe it. And I really like that as well. So we drop down again, and somebody has a failed attempt to start an outboard motor. While the singer then sings, "How Can I Resist?" And there's like a pace setting synth that actually wanders off key. And it was sort of, I really enjoyed that as well. And I can't, again, there's a lot of stuff in here that's I'm really liking, and I can't explain why. It's just a complete, gut reaction to it. Then we go into a little bit where the synth sounds like an outtake from Axel F. I don't know what they're doing there. And there's a really nice sort of note shrieking cameo from the guitar. And it's going, wow. And it sounds to me like someone saying, help, someone has just stolen my wallet / purse / bum bag / fanny pack. Apply as necessary. There's a clubby sound effect that sort of wobbles the whole thing back into the chorus, and then all the elements are in there at once. The kitchen sink's there, and the guitar and the synths and all this stuff, and then it fades out to this lovely guitar just fading out, like someone's pulled the plug, but it's taken another 5 seconds for the electricity to actually stop working as it goes away. And I really like that ending as well.
Yeah.
So this is really interesting to me because there's so many elements to this sonically. And I guess inevitably I like some more than others because there is so many of them. And for my taste, I would suggest, for me, less is more. And I think if they'd have honed down a few bits to this and not done so many changes, I'd have absolutely adored this track. As it is, I liked it and I enjoyed it. But that's my take.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think I like it more than you, but a little bit, not even that much. I mean, this is not like this is my favorite song or anything. I do enjoy listening to it from time to time, and I think you're right about, like, if you take elements out of it, you're left with this thing that sounds like several things that came before it. And what they probably did was they probably wrote that was probably the bones of the structure, because
Yes.
it's the easiest to write because it's not in the pejorative way, but it's derivative of a sound that came before it. But to put a new spin on it, they wanted to add other elements to make it more their own or more its own thing, rather than just a pastiche of something that came before 30 years ago or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's why, but I understand where you're coming from, and having like firmly come up, or when that music was coming, that original iteration was coming into popularity and it was in its original formation, you flock to that, and that's what you like. And this is like, maybe going a bridge too far with all the experimentation that's going on there, but I think they did it for a reason, for sure, and that probably was the reason to make it different.
But just to say, Andy, that if they, I don't know where this came out. I'm guessing sometime in the noughties, in my guess. And you play this without the bells and whistles, I think 90% of the audience who hear this wouldn't even know the music it came from. Um, and for the person who does know where it came from, I got no problem with them sounding a bit like that. Absolutely. I think what I alluded to before, I think they should have had a bit more confidence and say, okay, we're going to make our stamp on it, but we're not going to overstamp it. Just change for change. I think they could have been more confident with the song they had, because I think it's decent.
Yeah, or just maybe even just a little less ham-handed with all of the gadgetry and, like you said, glitter and spray paint and all that shit. Yeah, you're probably right. Unfortunately, there's not an iteration of the song that exists that has those parts pulled out for me to be like, yep, you know what, John, you're right. It is better without. But I totally
I'm sure I'm sure the audience that did hear this when it came out loved it anyway. And shut up, you old twat. Fair enough.
Well, to be fair, you were absolutely right about when it came out, sort of in that wheelhouse. So yeah, The Faint, they are an American indie rock band. They are formed in Omaha, Nebraska. The band consists of Todd Fink, and work with me on this one, Graham Ulickny, Ulicny, and a person named Just Depose. They only go by that moniker. And Clark Backley, and there has been some turnover in the band, but those are the members that are currently with them now. And they first got together in 1994 when they went by the name Norman Baylor, which just sounds like a guy that lives up the road. But they
and they found the bones of his mother inside his bed.
Yeah. The original lineup actually included Connor Oberst of Bright Eyes, who we've discussed. We did, you hear Omaha, Nebraska, you think, oh, maybe it's Bright Eyes territory, because that's definitely where Connor set up. But yeah, we did J. June Stars on Into the Music, I believe. So yeah, and they he left shortly after the formation, but the Faint continued to share a spotlight with Bright Eyes on Saddle Creek Records, which is kind of like the record company that Oberst and some of these other guys all formed together. And they went on to tour with them in 2005 after the release of this album, which came out in 2004. So their sound has been described as new wave, dance punk, and even goth on some tracks and albums. To date, they've released 8 studio albums between 95 and 2019. This particular track is off their 5th album, Wet from Birth, which, as I stated a moment ago, which was released in September 14th, 2004. Connor Oberst claimed in an August 2020 interview that with Pitchfork magazine that that the Faint were offered a major label record or a major label record deal leading up to this album, but turned it down out of loyalty and commitment to Saddle Creek, which at the time was still just a collaborative project between members of the Faint, Bright Eyes, and I don't know how, another reason why I'm still stunned that these guys didn't land on my lap sooner than just a couple of weeks ago when we did a review based on a request from the viewers, Cursive. And we did that song, Casualty. So this sort of trinity of bands are what originally propped up Saddle Creek Records, and their popularity and stuff would bring in other bands thereafter. Metacritic rates the album a 72 out of 100. And their review summary of Wet from Birth, and in their review summary for Wet from Birth, Sputnik Music would say, and I quote, "This album is like having sex in an 80s movie. You decide yourself what that means." So for what it's worth, they would go on to rate the album a 3.5 out of 5, which earns their great designation. So I guess what they're saying, or the inference is that sex in an 80s movie is great. So there's that. Um, Heather Fairs of allmusic.com would write of this track in her review of the album: the jabbing guitars on I Disappear have hints of dance punk lurking around the edges, which isn't really surprising since The Faint has been influenced by new wave and post-punk since long before many of the new wave revivalists even existed. And we will jump into the lyrics, and then I'll add a little bit more. I disappear. I lost control. My body's moving on its own. I watch myself walk away. A foreign spirit took my place. An empty stare. Its eyes are dull. Stole my essence. It's riding my pulse. A burst of black. A breath of smoke. I disappeared. I lost control. I disappear. I disappear. I disappear. I disappear. I lost control. My body's moving on its own. I watch myself walk away. A foreign spirit took my place. I disappear. I disappear. I disappear. How could I resist? It's all I've wanted. Now I guess I've got it. Why it happened, I do not know. Hope this doesn't last forever. I disappear. I disappear. I disappear. I disappear. In another article, I've focused on the single, would say the infectious beats, screeching guitars, and lyrical exploration of I Disappear encompass the unity of these varied elements. Inspired by a trip to Haiti, the first single of Wet from Birth deals with the topic of spiritual possession in a manner that doesn't exploit, but rather captures the electricity of the moment. So, I guess it's a song about having a witch doctor or somebody cast a spell on you and sort of possess your vessel.
No, I have to disagree. I have to
Vampires?
say, it's about goddamn time we had a vampire track on this channel.
I know. That's what I said the first time I heard it. I was like, oh my God, this is fucking Dracula. You tell me this is Dracula? The Count. No. But it could be. If you want it to be, it can be. But yeah, I'm glad you gave this one a listen. It's got that funk kind of club indie rock kind of sound to it. And as we said before, it's always fun to hear. Even if you don't like it as much as the original material, it's still fun to hear that this stuff still has life in it. You know what I mean? And people are still out here clearly listening to that stuff and wanting to give it new life as we progress further and further in the future. And that's
what music's all about, you know?
Yeah, exactly. How many times have we talked about songs and it's come back to Lennon McCartney? You know what I mean? And no one's ever going to be Lennon McCartney, but it's good that people are still aspiring to as near perfection as we've seen and creating these great songs that we can listen to year in and year out and stuff. So yeah, man, glad you gave it a listen. I'm glad you liked it. Everybody out there in the listening audience, let us know what you think of The Faint and this track, I Disappear, or any other tracks that maybe should be on our radar for a future listen. Or maybe just other stuff you want us to check out. The comments field is there for a reason, and we do so much enjoy you guys utilizing it. Also, feel free to like, share, and subscribe, especially that latter part. You new folks, please stick around. Think about subscribing. We have got gobs of content on the channel that you can go back and give a listen to. We've tried to organize them into playlists catered to the bands in question. So everything is easy, peasy, and there for one-stop shopping for y'all. Please give it a listen. All that out of the way, John and I hope to see all y'all in growing numbers on the next installment of the Audiophiles. See you later, guys.